If I start telling people about hell, I might just scare them off. Where are you going to scare them off to? Hell number 2? Or are you just going to sit there and let them burn?
There's theories that are out there. There's one where the Scofield Bible it was made to make people believe in the rapture, and because of Scofield, this is why this is everywhere. And what do you have to say about that?
Well, that was one of we have a whole section in the book, in the documentary too. It's called Red Herring Objections, and in that section we deal with this myth that basically the rapture is a recent teaching that these people, which would include the accusation that it's trying to cram it with the Scofield Bible, that it's a recent teaching and therefore must be rejected. Well, that's not true. That is so not true. It's not even funny. It's not true. and basically it starts back with the popular red herring argument. It's a lie, basically. And that's what they say is that the pre-trib rapture needs to be rejected, the position, because it started, they say, in 1830 by a guy named John Darby, okay, and then he supposedly got it from this girl named Margaret MacDonald in Scotland, and she was involved in this charismatic utterance, this demonic behavior, which I don't disagree with on that aspect, and that's where he was influenced by her, and that's where this whole recent teaching of the pre-trib position of the rapture came from, and therefore, since it started out being demonic and it's recent, and nobody else believed this in the history of the church, it can't be true. Well, that is a lie. I mean, it's all over the internet, and these people make, even with all due respect, whole documentaries off that lie. But we really, frankly, couldn't wait to get the information out on that because we did our research. In fact, in the documentaries on the DVDs, we actually went to Scotland, and we went on location, and we did our homework too. And we were actually there in Port Glasgow, and that's where Margaret MacDonald was born, and she was real. But she is not the one where the pre-trib rapture came from. And John Darby certainly didn't get his position on that from her. When you take a look at the facts, John Darby, he actually, and it's on historical record, that he actually arrived at the pre-trib position of the rapture in 1827. That's 3 full years prior to the 1830 accusation that he got it from Margaret MacDonald. So case number 1, he got it wrong. And what happened was he was in a writing accident, and so he was basically in hospice, kind of sitting up, and he had a lot of time on his hands. And so, of course, as a Christian, he's reading the Bible. And so as he's there reading the Bible, he began to see the distinction between Israel and the church. And that's a big clue that on the pre-trib position. Because the rapture, the 7-year tribulation, Daniel clearly says, Daniel chapter 9, is not concerning the church. And maybe we'll talk about that later. It's dealing with the Jewish people. And well, he began to see that distinction, that there was something different for the church, God's plan for the church, and he started to develop with the pre-trib position. All right, so that's 3 years prior, so that's lie number 1. He did not get it from her in 1830. Number 2, about the relationship, so-called relationship with Margaret MacDonald, that's what influenced him in 1830. He did know about Margaret MacDonald, okay, but it's on historical record again that he admitted that what she was doing with this charismatic utterance stuff, and you still even see that, unfortunately, in the church today, getting a so-called word from God outside of the Word of God, and that's very dangerous. But anyway, he admitted that what she was doing was demonic and wanted to have nothing to do with her. So he wasn't like sitting there being studious, oh, yeah, she's great, I love her. She's, no, that's a lie. Then the other one, which we couldn't wait to get to this, is you can actually get a copy of this so-called utterance from Margaret MacDonald. Again, it's historical record. And we got a copy of it and read the whole thing and reread the whole thing and kept reading it because we're like, you got to be kidding me. Because remember, what's the whole premise here? That this is supposedly where the pre-trib position started, from John Darby getting it from Margaret MacDonald from her utterance. Well, when you take a look at her utterance and read it for yourself, it's not even, she talks about a rapture, all right, but she's talking about not pre-trib, it's post-trib. It totally blew me away when I came across that document. And I'm going, how could these people do whole documentaries with this accusation when the whole thing is absolutely, utterly bankrupt? And we make this point in the book as well as in the documentary, because we also went and filmed out in England, southern England, and we went to John Darby's gravesite and did our homework there too. And so, but they came to the conclusion, wait a second, I'll try to be kind here, but based on the evidence of this accusation, either whoever started this should go get a different job. Go pick peaches, change tires, do something, because being an investigator, it ain't working for you. You know what I'm saying? Or, and that's just being kind, or you're a liar, and you're lying to people. And if this is the best that you can come up with, then shame on you, especially if you're supposed to be a Christian, right?
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous. It was one of the most bankrupt things. I just could not believe it, and we just couldn't wait to expose it. Because a lot of Christians, this one's thrown out there, it's a recent teaching, John Darby, Scofield Bible, it's a conspiracy theory, and it's all demonic, and nobody ever believed this. And a lot of Christians are going, no, the whole thing is bankrupt. It's ridiculous. And let me add this, too. We went further. Okay. First of all, the whole premise is it's a, quote, what? Recent teaching? Now, let's stop and examine that. So your whole basis that you're trying to get people to believe in is that you should reject the pre-trib position because it's recent. Well, we demonstrated that whole thing's not true anyway. But wait a second. There's another position on the rapture, okay, called the pre-wrath rapture, and that was started in 1990 officially, okay? And but wait a second. With Robert Van Kampen. And, wait a second, 1990? Well, that's a whole lot newer than 1830. So if you're going to be consistent in your logic and you're going to reject the pre-trib position based on your accusation that it started in 1830, which is not true, by the way, but if you're going to say that, then you certainly better reject pre-wrath. That's 1990. So the whole thing's inconsistent. But what's really inconsistent is it's not even true that it started in 1830. It didn't even start with 1827 with John Darby when he came across it by Bible study. It's, first of all, we base our belief in the pre-trib position because that's what the Bible says, right? John Darby basically rediscovered it, right? But again, he wasn't the only one. Not only is we base it on the Bible, and then that's what we provide with the evidence, the biblical basis for the pre-trib timing of the rapture, but also we went further beyond that. We took a look at history. So we took a look at the early church, right? John wrote Revelation approximately 95, 96 AD, right? So we went from basically 100 AD forward to 1830. Did anybody else in church history talk about pre-trib, believe in pre-trib, pre-mill, right? And that Jesus comes back prior to the millennial kingdom, hence the term pre-mill. There was 8 pages of historical evidence starting with the early church, Clement of Rome, and a bunch of the other early church apologists. 8 pages of evidence of people who, on record, historical record, believed in, talked about, promoted, taught a pre-trib, pre-mill position. So the whole thing is completely bankrupt, and yet it continues to be recycled again and again and again. Now, one of the guys, because we're going like, man, this is crazy. Again, man, if this is how you investigate stuff, go get a different job or stop lying. We got what this. Who would do this? Because this is it. And listen, I don't claim to be, the sharpest knife in the drawer. Right? Ask my wife. The peas done slid out of my casserole many years ago, and the cheese has slid off my cracker. I'm not saying I'm, get this giant, incredible detective IQ guy. I'm not even saying that. But anybody can come across this and discover how bankrupt it is. So to me, logically, I'm going, well, who in the world started this? This is crazy. This is crazy. Well, in our investigation, there's several different guys. There's guys doing it today, but one guy I'll call out, and his name is Dave MacPherson. Now, Dave MacPherson, when we began to investigate his background, right, we began to see that, believe it or not, and we provide the evidence in the book and the documentary, we began to see that this guy, I'm not making this up, he had a vendetta against the pre-trib position. And he literally, on record, in his own writings, his own words, he basically blamed the pre-trib position for pretty much every bad thing that ever happened in his life. And so he literally, which tells you right there, you got a false motive. And so he literally had to find something to try to undermine this biblical teaching. And he started a lot of these red herring arguments that, oh no, John Darby, oh no, Margaret MacDonald, oh, it's only started in 1830, oh no, it's some Catholic conspiracy, and all this other stuff. And it was absolutely crazy. In fact, tell you kind of where he's at, he wrote books, of course, against the pre-trib position. And in his own writings, listen to what he said. He says, in fact, I know that the pre-trib position is demonic because when I started writing a book against the pre-trib position, my dog became demon-possessed and tried to bite my hand. Are you serious? And this is on record, right? And we're going, come on, are you serious, guy? And we already know what your motive is. I don't know why you think that the pre-trib position is the answer. And I'm talking about family calamities, his own personal calamities, why he couldn't go into ministry and all this and that. He blamed it all on pre-trib. So he basically did whatever he could. And what's unfortunate is people would pick up his books, pick up his stuff without investigating his so-called research, and they just continue to propagate it today. But when you investigate his research, his false claims, and again, anybody could do this. We don't have like some secret connection to the Library of Congress, and we're the only ones who can come across this. You can go out there and find it yourself, folks. This thing is bankrupt. This guy had a personal vendetta against it, and he came up with a bunch of these baloney arguments. And again, that's just one of them. But that's one of the most popular ones that we couldn't wait to get because it's thrown a lot of Christians for a loop. And it's unfortunate because the whole thing is a lie.
If you like our videos, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to get all our frequent updates.